Hi everyone, my name is Fred Macedo. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to discuss a random theme of Spiritism in Gospel at Home. But before we get started, I want to ask you a question. Do you know Allan Kardec's work, also known as Spirit's Doctrine? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Alright, let's get into it. We start with the Our Father prayer. Please, Rosangela, start our prayer.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but delivers us from evil. Amen.
Thank you, Rosangela. Now I'm going to select a random theme of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Good Spiritists. Spiritism, when well understood, but especially when well felt, inevitably leads to the results listed above, which characterize the true Spiritists as well as the true Christian, for they are one and the same. Spiritism does not create a new morality. It only makes it easier for people to understand and practice the morality of Christ by providing unshakable and enlightened faith for those who doubt or waver. I'm going to read a little bit earlier. Moral persons. Truly moral persons are those who practice the law of justice, love, and charity in its greatest purity. If they question their conscience about their actions, they will ask themselves if they have violated this law, if they have committed any wrongdoing, if they have done all the good they could, if they have willingly disregarded any opportunity to be useful, if anyone might have a complaint about them, and lastly, if they have done unto others everything they would like to have done unto themselves. They have faith in God and in God's goodness, justice, and wisdom. They know that nothing happens without God's permission, so they submit to the divine will in everything. They have faith in the future, thus they place spiritual possessions above temporal ones. They know all the vicissitudes of life, all its sorrows, and all its disappointments are trials or expiations, and they accept them without complaining. Persons imbued with the sentiment of charity and love for the neighbor do the good for its own sake without expecting anything in return, and then repay evil with good, defend the weak against the strong, and always sacrifice their own interests to the interests of justice. They find satisfaction in the benefits they spread around, the service they render, the happiness they promote, the tears they dry, and the consolation they provide to the afflicted. Their first impulse is to think of others before thinking of themselves, and to attend to the interests of others before their own. The selfish, on the other hand, calculate the profits and losses entailed in every generous act. Moral persons are kind, humane, and benevolent toward all, regardless of the race of creed, because they regard all people as their brothers and sisters. They respect all sincere convictions that others might hold to, and they not anathematize those who do not think like they do. In all circumstances, charity is their guide. They tell themselves that those who harm others with malevolent words, who hurt others' feelings with their pride and disdain, who do not recoil from the idea of causing suffering or difficulty, however slightly, when it could be avoided, fail in their duty of love for their neighbor, and do not deserve the Lord's clemency. They hold no hatred or rancor or desire for revenge, for vengeance. Following Jesus' example, they forgive and forget offenses. They remember only the good deeds because they know that they will be forgiven according to how they themselves have forgiven. They are indulgent toward others' weaknesses, for they know that they themselves need indulgence, and they recall these words of Christ: "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." They never take pleasure in searching for defects in others or in calling attention to them. If necessity forces them to do so, they always look for the good that might mitigate the evil. They study their own imperfections and strive incessantly to combat them. All their efforts are focused on being able to say to themselves tomorrow that they are better than they were yesterday. They do not seek to exalt their spirits or talents at the expense of others. Instead, they seize every opportunity to point out what is praiseworthy in other people. They do not gloat over their wealth or their personal advantages, for they know that everything that has been given to them can be taken away. They use but do not abuse the possessions that have been accorded to them, for they know that it is a trust for which they will have to render in accounting, and that the worst use of it in regards to themselves would be to use it to satisfy their passions. If the social order has placed others under their tutelage, they treat them with kindness and benevolence because they are their equals before God. They use their authority to lift their morale and not to squash them with their pride. They avoid anything that could render their subordinate's position more painful. Those who are subordinate, on the other hand, understand the duties of their position and are scrupulous in consciously fulfilling them. Finally, moral persons respect in their fellow beings all the rights arising from the laws of nature. In the same way, they wish their own to be respected. This is not a list of all qualities that define moral persons, but whoever makes an effort to possess them, it's on the road that leads to all the others. I'd like to make a brief comment about this part. What is a moral person? It's a person that obeys God's highest commands, meaning uh, they they are good persons that uses all his gifts, her gifts to do good, avoid evil at all costs. Are these the persons that we are today? Certainly not. We are not moral persons yet, but we are destined to be. But for this to happen, we have to make a daily effort to change, to be better, to not hear the bad comments about us. Rosalie, o seu microfone está aberto. Do you want to make a comment? Você quer fazer algum comentário?
No.
Okay. And what about the good spiritists? We are the good spiritists. We are trying to be, to fill in this gap that we see in moral people. We are not the moral people yet, but we are making an effort to do so. So I continue on reading. Thus, is an exceptional intelligence needed to understand it, to understand this law of love? No, since one sees individuals with notable capacities who do not comprehend it, while average minds, even young people who had barely left adolescence, understands its most subtle nuances with admirable precision. This derives from the fact that the somewhat material aspect of the spiritist science requires only eyes to observe, whereas the essential aspect requires a certain degree of sensibility, which one might call maturity of the moral sense. Regardless of age or level of education, since it is particularly inherent to the development of the incarnate spirit, in some the material ties are still too tenacious to allow the spirit to disengage itself from the things of the world, because the fog that envelops then obscures their vision of the infinite. Consequently, they do not easily break with their tastes or their habits, as they do not understand anything better than what they have. The belief in spirits is for them a simple fact, but it does nothing or very little to change their instinctive tendencies. In other words, they see only a ray of light, insufficient to guide them and endow them with a powerful aspiration capable of overcoming their inclinations. We have a powerful aspiration capable of overcoming our bad inclinations. That's what Spiritism is all about. These persons are much more interested in the phenomena than the morality, which seems banal and monotonous. They insistently demand that the spirits introduce them to new mysteries, without asking if they are worthy of grasping the secrets of the Creator. These individuals are imperfect spiritisms, some remaining stationary or distancing themselves from their brothers and sisters in the faith, recalling at the obligation of reforming themselves, or otherwise reserving their sympathies for those who share their weakness or prejudice. Nevertheless, acceptance of the principles of the doctrine is a first step that will make the second easier in a future existence. So, if we can make it everything in this existence, in this life, we'll have others, but we have to make the best effort to accomplish whatever we can in this very existence. Those who may rightfully be regarded as true and sincere spiritists are at a higher degree of moral advancement. Their spirit is, their spirit dominates matter more completely, thus giving gives them a clear perception of the future. The principles of the doctrine make fibers vibrate within them that remain dormant in the former. In short, their heartstrings are touched. Therefore, their faith is unshakable. Some are little, are like the musician who is moved by certain chords, when others hear only the sounds. This is the most important part. True spiritists are recognized by their moral transformation and the efforts they make to overcome their bad inclination. This is us. We are not moral persons yet. We are very distant from moral persons because there are so many qualities, there are so many perfections that we did not achieve yet, but we are recognized. We will be seen by our moral transformation to become better, and the efforts, the struggle that we make to overcome our wrongdoings, our bad inclinations. While the former are content with their limited horizon, the latter understand that there is something better. They make the effort to free themselves, and they always reach their goal if they maintain a firm will. So now we're gonna not it's not a prayer. We say here in Brazil vibrações, um, vibrations, but in the sense of prayer for those who are most misfortune that are suffering. So let's thank God, thank Jesus for this opportunity we have with our language limitation. We are trying to pass on a message that everybody can be a spiritist. Everybody can embrace this doctrine that tells our hearts about the problems of the existence. So we ask Jesus to embrace all the ones that suffer throughout the world by war, natural disasters, and everything that we see as bad things that happens every day. And because we are blind to see the good things that will happen, we will ask Jesus to embrace all these people who suffers. And so I I finish this dear gospel at home asking for Rosalie, can you make the our final prayer? Prece final, pode fazer, Rosalie?
Rosinha?
Pode fazer, Zaninha.
Então pode fazer, Rosângela.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Thank you and have a nice week. God bless you.
Good night, everybody.
God bless you all.
Good night.